Welcome to CMOs Without Borders.
I'm Joel Crampton. I help financial advisors, RIAs, and wealth managers replace scattered marketing with strategic systems that boost AUM and production volume.
I'm Mandy MacPhee. I am a fractional chief marketing officer and work with founders who are doing too much and need someone to turn their scattered marketing into a system that actually drives results. Welcome to CMOs Without Borders. We're really excited. Joel and I are both really excited to have JL Verboomen on the show today to talk about all things AI. JL works with a company in Toronto called Massive Insights, where they are really focused on everything analytics, insights, AI driven, and they are at the forefront of what is happening in AI today. So, welcome, JL.
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you, Joel. It's great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So tell us a little bit about Massive Insights and what your cause is with Massive Insights.
No, absolutely. It's a great question, and I love talking about Massive Insights, and obviously, as we'll get into, love talking about AI as well. But I think I'm in a really cool spot in my life and my career where I get to work with really smart people and deal with really big problems. And I think that's probably the most exciting thing, is that we deal everything from the traditional analytics, data visualization, setting up data warehouses, things of that nature, which is kind of the bread and butter of a business. But we've also really expanded our capabilities in the data science field as well as in AI. And when I mention AI, that's AI of all types and flavors, everywhere from, hey, I want to start understanding AI, to I want to build a roadmap to get more value out of it, or tell me about AI and come in and speak to us about what we should be thinking about. So I get to work with really smart people on really big problems, and that's really what gets me up every morning, to be honest.
Yeah, I think AI is new to a lot of people. Over the last year, it has blown up significantly, but it really isn't new. I mean, when you think about, especially from a marketing perspective, when you think about predictive analytics and segmentation and all that work that we've been doing for years and years, that's a form of AI, is it not?
Absolutely. And that's probably one of the things that I tell people the most. We talk about how new AI is, or how new data science is. And I'm still teaching as well. And, everyone says, well, AI has only been around for a few years. And I said, well, it's been called a few things over the years. It wasn't that long ago we used to call it statistics, or we used to call it computational statistics. And then we started calling it data science. But really, it all comes down to numbers and data at the end of the day. And, whether we're using cloud infrastructure or traditional infrastructure, the thing is that the fundamentals really don't change. It's just how we're using them to leverage business and get business value out. That's really been the changing aspect.
I think with anything, when it comes to technology, there's early adopters, there's late adopters, the mainstream adopters. So we're definitely at that point where we're into the mainstream adopters. The problem with AI is there's just so many new things coming on. And
Absolutely.
so people are worried that they're missing out because they're not trying the latest new thing when they haven't even tried the thing that came out 3 years ago. And I think most people would equate AI in its current terminology and definition to ChatGPT, which
Absolutely.
I think really has blown up, of course, in the past 2 or 3 years. And so I think that's where I'm at. Like, I love technology, but I'm just not one of those early adopters. Mandy, I know you are probably a late adopter. So I think you're earlier on into incorporating AI in its current form into your business and your client's business. So I'm here to learn and trying to figure out how I can escalate my involvement into AI. So just would love to hear more about the different tools that you guys are working, and it certainly comes to when our audience, I think, would be really interested to hear like baby steps, like let's try this, then let's do this, and like let them get comfortable and then get into the complex.
Yeah, I've always been all about creating efficiencies where I can, finding the fastest path. Even when I'm driving, I'm like, which way will be faster?
Oh.
So I'm all about, finding that fastest path, and that's what AI does for me. Is it helps me get to that efficiency, find the fastest path, and do things in a much more quicker fashion. and that streamlines processes and gets things done rather than a day, gets things done in a matter of hours. I'll tell you, last night I used AI. I'm onboarding a virtual assistant right now. And yesterday afternoon, I said, "Oh my gosh, I have to onboard Alex. How do I onboard Alex?" And it almost felt overwhelming to try and put a checklist together, figure everything out. And so instead, I said, "Oh, maybe Claude can do this for me." So I asked Claude to put together a full onboarding checklist for me, put an onboarding plan together for Alex, my virtual assistant, and actually sign her up into certain platforms as well for me. Beautiful. In a matter of an hour, I had it all prepared and ready to go.
No, that's exciting. And the great thing about it, Mandy, is that when we think about the evolution of a lot of the tools that are out there, they've come a long way in a very short period. And that also has its share of risk, which we can get into a little bit later. But within weeks, a tool can go viral, where suddenly everyone is jumping on board and everyone thinks it's the greatest thing ever. And we sometimes have to take a little bit of a step back and say, okay, where are we actually going on this journey as well?
Yes.
Because the analogy I like to say to people is like, if you think about baking cookies, probably the most simple analogy you could have. If, the traditional Claude or ChatGPT is basically a chatbot. You could go in and say, hey, you know what, I feel like having cookies. And they'll say, great, JL, great idea. Here's a recipe for cookies. And you would go off on your own and you would actually be doing it. But now we're moving into more agentic AI, and where you have an agent doing it, where it may say,
Yes.
you know what, JL, here's a recipe, but also you're missing some ingredients. So I'm going to put it on your grocery list, or I'm going to order
Yes.
it, so that it can come tomorrow. And maybe I'll set a reminder that you can set the oven. And now we actually are starting to move into probably the more dangerous spot, where we're getting into tools like, and you've probably heard about OpenClaw, and I can talk a lot about OpenClaw, where it's starting to become more of an autonomous agent, where you can actually say, yeah, I want cookies, and it would say, okay, I'm going to go get the ingredients, I'm going to turn the oven on for you, I'm going to hire someone to come in and put them in the oven, and I'm going to have them delivered to you, which sounds great. However, when you think about giving something that much control, you have to start wondering, did it turn off the oven?
Yes.
And when we think about that from a business point of view, I see a lot of people putting a lot of trust in tools that they don't really know. The same thing is inviting someone in to use your computer. I mean, you would never do that. However, we think because it is a published tool that it's safe. And that's probably one of the biggest cautions that I give to folks, is really understand what's under the covers before you start exposing all of that data out there as well.
I like proactivity as much as the next person, but as an entrepreneur and just in my career, it's hard for me to give up some of that control.
Yeah.
And Mandy, when you mentioned you brought on a virtual assistant, my mind immediately thought, oh, Mandy's high in technology. She's going to create this AI agent. It's going to do all that. And it's no, it's an actual person. And so I'm just kind of curious how you're using your personal, virtual assistant, who's also maybe going to complement or interact with your AI agents that you've built.
Absolutely. Everything that I've built on my desktop. I don't use OpenClaw, and I want to talk about OpenClaw because my network blew up with OpenClaw
Absolutely.
recently. So my personal assistant is going to use Claude and ChatGPT to help me do research, to help me build out content based on my brand and messaging system. So I have taught my AI tool to talk like me, write like me, but it is only it's only at the start. So my personal assistant will go in, prompt it, get the start out, but I still need to review it. I still need to make sure that it is me, that the content is sound, that the research is accurate. You always need that judgment. So I'm saving time with my personal assistant doing the prompting. I'm saving time using AI so that I can focus on my clients. But at the same time, I still need to go in and do the due diligence and the work behind it.
Yeah, this is the spring of 2026 when we're recording this, and was it just last weekend that Claude blew up on social media, and shut down their servers because everybody's downloading the app and using the application.
Yeah.
What's the next thing, JL? OpenClaw, I think I've heard about that as well. It's not the same thing as Claude.
Well, it's interesting that you actually bring that up, Joel, and probably, and again, I'll be the first to tell you I'm not a marketer. I always tell this to Mandy too. I would be the world's worst marketer. So I appreciate that there's lots of marketers on that are going to be far better than I. But oftentimes, the first little bit of smoke is that when you think about OpenClaw, it's probably the only service that has changed names 3 times in a couple of weeks.
Wow,
to be honest
really?
with you, because a few weeks ago we used to call it ClodBot, and so
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
and there was a lawsuit pending about infringement of Claude and
Claude, yeah.
Anthropic being upset about that. So then they changed it to Moltbot,
Yep.
and that had some issues
Heard
with
that
it as
too.
well. So we're now into OpenClaw, and there's lots of talk about that. And when I take a look at what explodes LinkedIn, or what explodes on LinkedIn, or what becomes viral on LinkedIn, OpenClaw is certainly one of them, because it went from 0 at the beginning of January through to every other person is talking to me about it. And
It's amazing.
it's
That's 2 months.
amazing. It's amazing because at the beginning of January, and when I look at the chat messages I'm getting from people, friends and colleagues and things of that nature, early January, everyone was so excited about it. And they were excited about the promise of moving away from chatbots towards autonomous systems and how it was going to make us all more efficient and effective and all of those other things. Great promise. 6 weeks later, I have people saying, good God, I tried it. Now I don't know what it's doing. And how do I get rid of it? Because we've seen in the last 6 weeks it moving from a great promise to actually a security nightmare for a lot of organizations, where now suddenly all of the security issues are coming about, where people are giving it control over things, and it's maxing out credit cards, it's exposing APIs, it is draining.
Bitcoin.
Adding malware.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's doing all of those things. And in 6 weeks, I've seen it go from a sweetheart to a bum, and people are still talking about it and still downloading it and using it, which is amazing to me. So the number one thing I can say to you users is please stop using it. Do not install it on your computer. I would not trust it. And people often
OpenClaw,
say,
right? Yeah.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's way too dangerous.
What needs to happen, JL, in order for it to be safe?
Yeah, I mean, that's where, and again, people always say, well, do you hate anything that has to do with autonomous AI? I don't. I think autonomous AI and agentic AI has a lot of promise. And when I think about, and again, I'm not always the biggest fan of Claude or the biggest fan of ChatGPT. I think they all have their pluses and minuses. But when I take a look at what Claude Code does, and Claude Code is, a very powerful tool that has to still be respected. But it has, it's a much safer way of doing what OpenClaw is actually doing. It has enterprise-grade security. It has for approval before it does anything. It has 0 data retention. It has all of those guardrails in place. So you can feel good that somebody from a security point of view has put the guardrails in place so you can use it safely. The best way to think about OpenClaw is those security guardrails weren't really put in place. It was sort of like, here's a bike, go ride it. Well, we know how that's going to work. You're going to fall quite a bit. You're going to find out the hard way of how to ride it. Maybe you're going to get there. But the challenge is that you are giving it basically carte blanche on your system to do anything. Now, I can see where the excitement from that comes from. Hey, I can automate my emails. I can have it read my emails. I can do everything. But at the same time, what else does it have access to? I've seen cases where it had access to credit card information, and suddenly, that became exposed as well, which wasn't obviously a very good thing and wasn't what the intent was. But the proper guardrails weren't in place for that to actually happen. So I think what happens is people get and the great thing about this marketplace is that people want to use these tools, right? There's this unmet need that people want to be more efficient, having a team of 2 behave like a team of 20. And CEO of Massive Insights. I mean, he's a great proponent of Claude Code. And I see what he can do, and that's David Kim, that, in a few short hours, he can produce what it would take an army of people to do, in weeks. That's the type of thing we want to get to, but we want to make sure that it's controlled and that it doesn't, give us outputs that we don't want as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really sound advice, JL. I was talking to a friend of mine today, actually, and we were saying, well, we both use Claude, and we use Claude Cowork. We don't use Claude Code because we can't vibe code. We don't have
Yeah,
vibe
you
code.
understand it, yeah.
So we've been using Claude Cowork. So we've started calling ourselves, we're vibe prompting
Yeah.
as we use Claude Cowork. Can you explain, JL, the biggest differences for our audience, the biggest differences between Cowork and Code on Claude?
And
Yeah,
maybe how that
absolutely.
difference between ChatGPT, which everybody, including their mom,
Yeah.
including my mom, is using, who's almost 80.
Well, good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure she has some great cookie recipes that she can
Yeah.
share as well. And probably the best way that I can describe it for the viewers is the best way to think of it is that, back to the whole cookie analogy, ChatGPT is very good at giving an answer, right?
It'll always give you an answer.
It'll always give you an answer,
Yeah.
and it will always tell you that you were right and that you should have asked this
Yes.
question. And sometimes I wish it would tell me I was wrong. It's very good at giving you an answer. Is it always the most accurate answer? Probably not. Does it need to be verified? 100%. A great example was I was trying to be cool when Taylor Swift's new album came about. And I said, hey, I'm going to cheat and use ChatGPT to tell me about the album. And it created hallucinations, songs that never existed. And I got called out on it pretty quickly. And I'm like, gosh, I got caught. But a lot of that actually goes on. I mean, people quickly realized I wasn't that cool, nor did I listen to the album. But so that is the base, what people are understanding, Gen AI or AI to actually be. But when we start thinking about it becoming more, and people are now starting to use the term, we've moved away from more Gen AI and chatbots into starting to talk about agentic AI, which sounds like an even cooler thing. And basically what that is trying to do is, build in code in a relatively simple way to automate tasks. So a great example is trying to automate tasks where there's not a lot of value added and it takes a lot of time. One of the pain points, for example, that a lot of people create an agent for in Claude Code is, hey, here are my ideas, format the presentation for me. I don't want to figure out what the footer is, what the header is, where to put the logo, do all of these things. So I'm going to build an agent or a skill to actually allow me to do that. And over time, you start building up all of these skills, such as tell me, coming off of a Teams call or a Zoom call, prepare all of the meeting notes for me, create a draft and email for me to actually do. So it becomes, to Mandy's earlier point, a personal assistant for you. It enables you to be a lot more efficient and repeats some of the more mundane tasks. Thinking about that in a more tech environment, one of the things that we always try to do at Massive Insights is talk to people about what are the things that are the pain points. So, for example, what's your most expensive talent doing that you really don't want them doing? A great example is, and all of the data engineers will probably either hate me or love me for saying this, most data engineers or coders hate to actually write documentation. They do it because they're told to, because they have to, but they say, it's hard for me to add value to it. I do it at the end. One of the great things about using an AI tool is it can document as you go and actually create very, very good documentation. Now, what does that do? It doesn't just allow the data engineer not to do it, but it frees or she or he up to actually do more code and be even more efficient and have a better tool that is trained to actually come up with all of the documentation as well. Now, again, would I ever ship code that was created by ChatGPT or Claude? Absolutely not. But it's a great starting point. And it allows you to automate a lot of those tools. But again, it really comes down to understanding the guardrails and really what are the points that you want to automate as well. The analogy that I often use for people is that you would never automate the entire kitchen, right? There may be certain things that you want sous chefs to do, prep chefs to do, but the executive chef at the end is still putting the parsley in and making sure that they're responsible for the overall presentation. No different from AI. Get it to the point where you can start reviewing it and put your own label on it. Don't just ship out what ChatGPT does or Claude does, because that isn't a differentiator. The differentiator is that you're able to do it at scale and actually put your own your own calling card on top of it.
Yeah. It's amazing how fast and quickly agentic AI has come up. Like January to now, it's been 2 months.
Yeah.
2 months, and everybody is talking about agentic AI now. Whereas last year it was all about Gen AI.
Yes.
When you think about the highest value problems that people can solve for, or that nobody's solving for using AI today, what are those, JL?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because the one thing that I always say is that quite often people are often struggling to say, where do I even start when it comes to AI? I know it's a cool tool. I know I should be doing something, but where should I actually start? And one of the things that we often talk about, in the work that we do at Massive Insights, whether we're talking to an existing client or a new client, is that quite often people have a hard time saying, they come to us saying, I think I want a chatbot, or I want a dashboard. I want something with AI for reporting because someone is telling me that I should be doing that. But the reality is that those are typically symptoms and not really the underlying problem, to be honest. Those, oftentimes that, where I see the most opportunity come about is that there's a lot of operational friction in small business, medium business, large business, enterprise business that the organizations have kind of normalized. It's just what you got used to doing. So it takes 3 weeks to produce a report, or we don't do very good documentation, or things of that nature. But the reality is that the best spot to start is finding those use cases that are causing that one friction point that you're looking for, such as whenever JL goes on vacation, we can't get that report, or it takes me 3 weeks to pull my own report. Those are the friction points that really show the use case, rather than having a strategy deck, right? I mean, I've seen so many AI roadmap decks that have come and gone that people can look at and say, yeah, that's a great roadmap, but how do we get started? The most success I see is when people start with a single problem and they actually say, this is how we're actually solving it, because then you actually have something to say, we solved this problem, we saved X% of time, now let's invest more in doing it, because the results really speak volumes in how you're actually going to scale this moving forward as well. So, that's certainly one of the biggest things that I see is starting small, getting some momentum and moving forward on that one as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We're marketers, Joel and I. We often see a lot of companies try to do marketing using AI. The problem is you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
So your prompts are only as good as what you know. So from an advice perspective to our audience, JL, as we think about how founders are using and financial advisors are using AI today, what are some of the watch-outs that they need to be aware of?
Yeah, and probably, and to be honest with you, a lot of my watchouts are going to be even more generalized than that, because the one thing that I mentioned one of them is that don't necessarily trust the output, but question the output. So, for example, if you get a response back from ChatGPT or Claude, ask it, why did you answer it that way? And it's amazing the response that you're actually going to get, where it says, or give me a source where you actually got that information. Start questioning it.
Yeah.
And that interaction, to be honest with you, is really where you're going to get a much better result. That once you start poking holes in it or saying that, hey, ChatGPT, I don't believe you. It's not going to be offended. And if it is, it'll still tell you were right. But it's really about that interaction that you're going in to say, Is this really the best way, or why would you say that, or I want you to think of it in a different way. So number one, question the results that you're actually getting. And the other thing is, the prompting is become more of an art than it is a science, to be honest with you. And I think that's where having marketing expertise versus programming expertise is actually huge when it comes to AI. Is that the more robust the request that you can make and the more context you can give, the better your result is actually going to be. So don't ask for, create an email to my customers about my new product. Tell ChatGPT who your customers actually are. What is the target? Who's the segment that you're going after? What does the product actually do? Because that's going to give it a lot more information to go by. And you're going to see very, very quickly that the result becomes far more tuned to what you're actually doing. So don't be afraid of giving detail. From a programming point of view, we're used to if-then statements, but from a marketing point of view, you should have a lot of information that you can ultimately feed in to give it as much context as possible. And the more context you can give it, to be honest, the better the result is actually going to be. So I think that's the other big thing. And again, my point is always around any tool that you're actually going to use, question everything.
Yeah.
Because hallucinations are still, running rampant in a lot
I
of
would add to
cases.
that. I would add to that, JL, and say that let your Gen AI take a pause too
Right.
before it actually starts giving you an output by asking, what questions do you have for me before
Right.
you get started? Even better, ask it to be an expert for you. Act as my research analyst and tell me what the competitive pressures are in the market for this product based on this audience with these competitors. And then ask it to pause. What questions do you have? Because it'll fill in some gaps that you didn't think about too.
Absolutely. And you raise an excellent point that if you don't fill in those gaps, and that's where oftentimes where hallucination comes in. It wants to give an answer, so it will fill in the gaps for you. So remove that temptation for it and give it the information that it actually has and give it a role to play. To your point, be my research analyst, be my customer. And don't be afraid of telling it when you want it to do research. Do some research on this industry. Tell me what's actually going on. And in fact, oftentimes I'll tell people that they're often afraid to use their own internal data because there may be regulatory concerns or there may be IT concerns or it'll take me too long. And that's the reason I don't do AI is it's going to take me 6 months to get the data. Probably one of the best spots to start and the safest spot to start is use external data. Ask Claude to have a look to say, if you're looking for pricing, ask it to take a look at competitor pricing for you and try to determine what the competitor strategies actually are. Using that, you don't have to expose any of your own data and you can still get a lot of the value that you're ultimately looking to get out of it as well. So use it as a tool, use it as a research tool, but to your point, fill in the gaps as much as possible, but also give it a very specific role to actually play. Is this a beginner? Is this a university student? Is this a CEO that's asking the question? Or who are you actually selling to? Give them the information about the market that you're targeting. And it's amazing the result that you're actually going to get on that side as well.
Yeah, I think the more context you can give it, the better. So prompt engineering, prompt, whatever you want to call it. But I think also don't be afraid to be rude or direct with
Correct.
the tool. It's not a person. And actually studies have shown that you get better output and results if you are mean to it and you cuss at it and you say, no, you're
Absolutely.
completely off base. And so it takes those feedback and says, oh, well, I'm way off base. Let me try to provide something else beyond what I was already doing. So
No,
I think
absolutely.
don't be afraid to be mean to your AI.
Yeah.
It's all going to take over the world eventually.
Exactly.
And we're all going to be its agent and its battery pack if you think about the Matrix. So, we're all just commodities now to AI.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
ask it to be brutally honest. That's what I do
Yeah.
all the time. Be brutally honest with me. Don't sugarcoat stuff.
Yeah,
And it does.
yeah, absolutely. And you'll always be right in its eyes. But the one thing
Yeah.
that'll often tell me is tell me why I'm wrong and tell me what I don't know, right? Tell me which questions I should ask you so that you can give me a better answer. Use the tool against itself as much as, because when the zombie apocalypse hits, they're going to have to fight each other. We may as well train them on that now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we've talked a lot about how you can use AI as a discovery tool or as a tool to create efficiencies. When it comes to things that companies might miss with AI, JL, if they haven't started using AI or they're on their starting journey of using AI, what are the things and the advice that you'd give them?
Yeah, it's. I always try to give the example of start small, start with something, start by using it. Because in a lot of the people that I talk to that are talking about AI, to be honest with you, I don't always think that we're the best cross sample of what's actually out there. Most people have never used ChatGPT. Most people have not used Claude. And I know that sounds shocking, but I would say even in my own IT community, there's people that have never used those tools out there as well. Talk about them, they talk about how they should know about them, but they're afraid because they're like, what's it going to do? Starting small. And the other thing is realize that people are using it. I was talking to a few organizations not that long ago, and they said, trust me, JL, no one in our organization is using any of these tools because we don't allow it. In reality, when you talk to people, they're using it. They're just not using it in an official way. They're using it at home. They're using it on their phones. So when we think that we can lock down things, we can lock them down as much as possible. But the toothpaste is out of the tube. We know that those tools are out there. It's the same as me telling my students that I'm trying to teach data science and AI to, don't use Gen AI, don't use AI. It seems silly for me to actually say that. We know it's happening. So we have to take accountability for that. But make sure that people have the right tools and you put the right guardrails in place so that they can feel confident with it as well. And quite often, smaller businesses often feel as though, well, I don't want to expose anything. And even at the cheapest levels of Claude or ChatGPT, you can put controls in place so that you're not going to leak PII and you can keep all of your prompts within the organization. You just have to know how to set them up properly. So oftentimes, working with someone to say, how do I actually set this up so I don't have to worry about that is a big thing as well. And finding those pain points that you can actually start automating so that you don't have lawyers doing their own invoicing because that's not going to drive much business for it as well. Or just trying to put your best foot forward in trying to actually do something and experiment with it to see what actually happens. So that's probably my best advice. Start small with a pain point and actually see what sort of results you can actually get, because it is infectious after a while. And I think you've seen it in your work, Mandy, that once you start using it, it's amazing what you can find reasons to use it for, to be honest.
Yeah, I called Claude my lover the other day because I spent more time with Claude over a week than I did with my husband.
Ooh.
Yeah, Claude is a good guy. I think he's a good guy. I kind of picture what he looks like. I'm not sure I have it right, but you're absolutely right. I mean, something as simple as I was trying to help out my father-in-law the other day, and he's well into his 80s, and he kept hearing a beeping coming from a box. And again, I'm hundreds of miles away, and I'm like, take a picture of it. So he took a picture of all of his wires and routers and all sorts of things. And ChatGPT said, I actually think I know what that beeping is. It's probably a battery backup in his router. True enough, called up, got a new battery, was able to have it shipped by Amazon. It's fixed
From the picture.
just from the picture.
Isn't that amazing?
And
Yeah.
so, when we think about how that changed someone's life, it seems like a small thing, but that power is incredibly powerful for someone, because how else would someone who's 85 actually be able to ever diagnose something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
My first thought when you said that was, gone are the days of those Where's Waldo books. You can just take a pic, like a snapshot of it, and hold it up to the camera, like, show me where Waldo is.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
just zero in on that right now. Skip all of the predecessors, and we'll just get to it.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Joel, do you have any other questions for JL?
No, I mean, I would love to learn more about your company, Massive Insights. So feel free to take a little bit of time to plug the company and what you do
Yeah,
and help
absolutely.
companies and how people listening to this could potentially engage with your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think What we always try to do at Massive Insights, and I know, as I said, I'm thrilled to work with the company, and I work with incredibly smart people. I love being the dumbest person in the room all the time. It gets me excited. And a lot of different experts in the world that are able to translate what can we actually do in order to solve business problems. And it's not always a dashboard, it's not always a data warehouse, it's not always an AI solution. Sometimes it could just be, a data strategy. It could be around help us with governance, do things of that nature. We also are, very much a boutique firm where we're not one of the big three or big five or whatever the number is right now, where, we're small enough still to be very approachable, where we can actually work very directly with small, medium size and large business. And I'm thrilled to say that we have organizations in all of those areas as well. It's not always a huge engagement, but sometimes it's just helping entrepreneurs or small business actually move to that next phase as well. And the other thing is that we're very hands-on. We're all active practitioners in the space. I think if we were to add up our years of experience, it probably gets into 300 years pretty quickly, where there's a lot of experience. And people often say there's lots of gray hair. I always say there's lots of no hair. But when it comes to being in this business, but we truly love what we do, and that's the exciting thing for me. And we love working with organizations from the bottom up. So I always say at the end of all of my articles on LinkedIn, I'll leave a light on. We just try to be the light that's going to help people find their way through a very complicated technical mess all the time. And that's what I like to be, is sort of that light that says, maybe it's not that complicated, or maybe there are easier ways of actually doing this. And I think that's what I'm most proud of with the organization, that it's really easy to make something sound complicated. It's really difficult to make it sound easy. And I think that's what I love doing, is being able to take the complicated and make it easy for people to say yes to, and to actually take advantage of really cool time that we have in technology right now. I've been lucky enough to be in this industry for 30 plus years. I've seen the move to data warehouses, through data science, through AI and all of those things. And the one thing that I'm most proud of is that you're able to still take advantage of it and show business value as you go through it. Now, how we do that business value has changed, right? The tools have changed. Same thing as the subjects that I learned when I graduated have all changed. The basics are still basically the same, right? It's still statistics, it's still numbers, it's still data. You just need people that, if you are stuck, maybe it's that you're not working with the right people that can actually translate it in that as well. It isn't that it's insurmountable, but you just need to have some help in order to get there as well. And I think that's how we're well positioned to be.
Yeah, I've met a lot of the partners at Massive Insights, between JL, Brian, Julie, David, who's the lead, all very smart, very capable, and so much to learn from each of them.
No, absolutely.
Thanks so much for being our guest, JL. It's been a great conversation, enlightening, illuminating, just like your business. We really enjoyed the conversation around AI. We could go on for days talking about AI. We might have to have you on again.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to come back anytime. If there's any specific thing that you'd love to talk about, I'd love to be back. Thanks, Mandy, and thanks, Joel. It was great meeting you.
Hey, Shell.
Thanks, JL.
Take care.
Bye.